Welcome to the final frontier. For panelists, we have Rob Grenier, Senior Vice President of Vestal Pine. For those of you who don't know this company, as I did not either, I'll admit to my fault. It's a little $14 billion company. Tara Birdshaw, founder of Birdshaw Supply Chain Solutions, joins us from Atlanta. Thank you, Tara. Jamie Gomez, Managing Director, Sycon Energy Services. Thank you. And Lou Mastro, CEO of Transportation Productivity Group. Thank you all for coming, and we're ready to go. With that, we're going to cover, Lou and everybody else, we've been covering everything from retail to chemicals to bullwhip factors to collaboration to leadership. And I really want to let you folks give a little bit of a download of what you're currently experiencing, either in an operation or what you're seeing other customers who you work with, unnamed is fine with us, to see what exactly you're doing to help out in this extreme situation of different things going on. You know, so for example, we discussed forecasting issues. Some people are not having so much problems with forecasting. Other ones don't even know what a forecast is, or it could be as good as 1 day to 30 days max. But with that, why don't I start with Rob, since you're here. Thanks, Rob.
So our focus has been on lead time reduction. I think within most opinions, particularly boiler welding supplies, consumables to the oil and gas, automotive industries. And if you think about lead times getting longer during this whole pandemic, right? We have never been able to control vessels, containers, availability. Everything's getting longer. Everybody's hedging the bets we talked about, which only makes lead time and forecasting more problematic. The lead times got longer, more inventory, more lead times, more delays. So we've taken a very deliberate approach with this, what we talked about earlier. We're in a shared supply chain, right? A global shared supply chain, regardless of our industry. We're all moving material from Asia to the US, from Hamburg, Germany to the US to Canada. It's a shared supply chain. It has a fixed capacity. So what we have to do is become better customers to our suppliers and have that relationship and approach. If you think about learning from Toyota, and this is where I think lean thinking applies, is where's that source of overburden and unevenness for the entire supply chain? It's usually driven by what we understand or think we understand the customer demand and value, and just amplify that back upstream. We're the source of that variation. So our approach has been around how do we become our supplier's best customer, knowing we have this fixed capacity, and knowing forecast is going to be wrong, and knowing forecast is going to change. How do we internalize our thinking around reducing lead times? So where are we the source of that delay or that poor information, or that as everybody's producing more that's not going anywhere, only adds the complexity of that lead time getting longer. So how do we be more deliberate with our demand forecasting and our ordering and our deliveries to our customer, maybe understanding what's not working, what's not moving, and be very deliberate. I think it was mentioned earlier, be very deliberate, almost fixed, firm, and frozen planning and forecasting of what's actually needed to deliver the right mix, right part time, right quantity, rather than more volume. And a steel industry that we operate in, very traditional. I think Praveen mentioned in a previous conversation, he came from automotive and learned lean thinking and applying to oil and gas. I'm still trying to apply to oil and gas to get that thinking differently around outcomes and systems thinking to overcome long lead times and forecasting. It's thinking differently around those systems thinking and outcome around what's needed rather than what I can do, and translating that in terms of demand visibility and predicting much more data-driven forecasting, demand profiling around what precisely do I need when I need it, even though it's going to come in a longer delivery time or lead time, and get better outcomes that way. So we've been able to produce on-time delivery or generate improved on-time delivery of 78%, even this year, on-time delivery to our customers, even overcoming the headwinds of the pandemic and the delays. So I think it's an approach to understanding value and how do you translate that value back upstream, not to expect your suppliers to operate differently, but really to collaborate and understand how I'm actually causing more noise, more pain to them to become a better customer to my suppliers and get better outcomes that way. So that's how we approach it.
Great. Well, Lou, do you want to throw some insight on this? I don't know if you can hear me, Lou.
He's on mute.
She's on mute.
Yeah, I would put it on mute. Rob, sometimes you kind of fading in, fading out, so recommendation, try to keep that mic maybe a little bit closer to you. We all muted to hear you better. One of the things that we're noticing, and obviously you have to be a good customer to the carrier, to your vendor. One, they need to get the containers. Two, you need to get the containers offloaded. Timeliness is big, but interestingly enough, I had to run a couple of bids, towards the end of this year. And I've actually had carriers this year back away from participating in the bids because we do low tendering via emails and phone calls. And, with the strain on being able to hire people, some of the carriers were like, we're not going to participate in something that's now becoming archaic. We need to have, APIs going back and forth, or, your TMS or WMS system sending us information saying, here's the load tender, here's where it is. We'll accept it online and we'll tell you when the appointment is and we'll come and pick it up. But we're not going to be answering phone calls or emails. We just don't. One, I think they have the people to do it. Two, I think they just don't want to pay the people to do it. They want them to be doing other things. So they're trying to streamline as much as possible. So I'm seeing that more and more regularly now. It used to be one or two of the guys that did not want to participate in the bids. And now it's, multiple carriers saying that they don't want to participate in the bids. I think everybody has probably seen, there's a driver shortage. Numbers range anywhere from 60 to 100,000 driver shortages. But, when you take a look at the transportation companies, that's not the full percentage of all the people that work. They have other functions other than drivers, and the constraint on the employment is in every facet of the business. It's not just drivers that everybody's having a hard time finding. I know I listened in a little earlier, Tim, to someone else talking about, trying to make sure that they have the best high qualified people to do the jobs. I'm actually seeing people now kind of settle saying, I need a warm body and we'll train them.
Right. Well, I'll just have to admit that what you just discussed is totally music to my ears. I would love to see APIs everywhere. It's kind of like a conversation we were having earlier. It's about time the freight forwarders go paperless, and it's not really the freight forwarders' fault, right? They want to go paperless. So anything like that can drive efficiencies, technology to get rid of unnecessary manual or old EDI transmissions. A lot of people don't realize EDI is as old as an AS400. So, any type of, I think to the points earlier on cybersecurity, absolutely, we should all be on top grade platforms, but we also need to work on top grade connectivity that is cyber smart. So with that, Tara, if you can shed some light as well of what you're seeing, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, so mine's really more on the sourcing and procurement side. Every supply chain got hit. I know y'all been talking about that all day, during COVID, and still we hear it, I think, on the news every second, it feels like sometimes. I was in a pretty good spot. So I wanted to ensure my organization was flexible and agile. We were already pretty much strategic. We were doing some tactical, but I think it helped a lot. We were focused more on strategy already when COVID hit. But I did look at several ways to help turn things around as quickly as I could. One was on on dual sourcing. Again, luckily, my team had dual sourced a lot of our high volume products. I know some people got caught with that if they were single sourced. But we did have some that didn't have another source, and we did have some issues with that. So we basically jumped on that as quickly as we could and found other suppliers that could be a backup, or we just split 50-50. It kind of depended on the situation. So I think that helped. We also stretched our boundaries more and did even more multi-geographical sourcing, as we were concerned. We didn't know what was going to happen. Some parts of the world may have been affected more than others or differently because of COVID. So we wanted to make sure we were kind of spread out from a geography standpoint. We also beefed up our safety stock, our buffer stock. I know everybody says, just in time, lean, and I think that caught a lot of people by surprise when that happened because they had very low buffer stock. So we automatically or just immediately looked at all of our buffer stock and reevaluated that and put some of those in place to where we were not so lean and we had some buffer stock. And then we did have some contracts in place with suppliers. So where it made sense, we thought it would actually help. We put more contracts in place with different suppliers. And then I'd say lastly, we looked at really supplier relationship management, where we really have those strong partnerships and where we didn't really have strong partnerships. And started to develop out those partnerships and working with the current suppliers on creative ways to help reduce cost and carbon footprint to really bring them on board as true partners. So I think it's not just one kind of silver bullet. I think we have to take kind of a broad approach and look at different areas. But I think my team did a really good job with that nobody could have prepared for what's happened over the past 18 months.
Well, that's really refreshing. I think a lot of people were caught a lot worse than you were in what you were involved in. It was clearly that you stepped into an immediate collaboration process on the procurement side. And I think we know there's plenty of stories where everybody was shooting for the lowest cost price and they probably got hurt the most in this environment, just even on the logistics side of the business. Jamie, any insights you'd like to share with us? You're on mute.
Wanted to make sure that you guys listen and the sound is okay. Is the sound okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think from my perspective, from what I have done in the past 12 months, I can see organizations with the CFOs, the chief financial officers, placing more pressure on the understanding of what is the ESG state, the environmental, social, and governance state of the companies, specifically in oil and gas and chemicals, and how the supply chain, suppliers, and the procurement strategies are shaping to understand the carbon concentration, the carbon emissions, kind of the part of the human rights of the different elements in the supply chain. I think that's an interesting one since this is going to drive the agenda from top executive on how performance is going to be from organizations. And I think my contribution to this is how the systems track down the state of how your supply chain in terms of the core 1, core 2, core 3. I think the visibility on how a supplier is in terms of how the product represents the amount of carbon footprint for that company, and then being aware of substitution if that is the case. I think that's what I can say on how companies are going to be looking for reducing or improving performance I think that's complex in the sense that, together with the other parameters or characteristics of what you're trying to get from the supplier, on top of that, there is this ledger on how you can improve as a company with your suppliers and your sourcing strategies. That's my insight. Very dynamic inside the companies, inside operators, on how every single one in the function of supply chain can make the sourcing activities, procurement, logistics, all gaining visibility on carbon footprint and carbon emissions and kind of alignment with ESG expectations.
Great, thank you, Jamie. The numbers you were talking about, Rob, in creating and getting more tactical on actually getting the material there and things like that. What did you have to do differently? Was there any things that, changed in your supply chain or evolved from a team effort of becoming more efficient, or was it just tactical?
Yeah, good question. I think it's traditionally what we were measuring, what we were rewarded on was very suboptimized. And still to this day and age, we were achieving KPIs, full utilization, absorption, a lot of accounting metrics around OEE and utilization still that were actually making things worse. I needed more changeovers. I needed a higher mix, not higher volume and quantity. So for the entire supply chain, including manufacturing and not just freight forwarders and logistics and the providers and the ports, but really back up to pre-material and raw material feeding my supplier, my manufacturing suppliers, was aligning KPIs around outcomes rather than they're achieving their metrics at my expense. And it was very suboptimized. So really aligning an organization, whether it's quality, operations, supply chain, customer service, sales even, was around what does the customer need and how do we derive that KPI, that outcome. And what we did is we aligned the organization on on-time delivery. We elevated on-time delivery to the customer. So value in the eyes of the customer in terms of winning market share for us was service. It wasn't higher quality. We were going to win with superior product quality based on service. That was what was going to win market share for us, as measured by on-time delivery. If I could deliver it to you as you needed it, when you needed it, right part, right time, right quantity. So not much new, but transforming our company around, that's the outcome metric that our customer values most. So let's align and prioritize, work on the vital few from a strategy deployment, Ocean Economy around most important business objectives was around, am I delivering what's needed to my internal customer to serve the end customer? And it was changing what was previously performance metrics, maybe even incentives that they were achieving previously to, I need you to actually perform worse to get the system to perform better, to get better outcomes. And that was a dramatic change from the mindset of the organization around my function's no longer efficient. It's kind of like speeding up to a stop sign. You don't get to work any faster. I need you to get to work on time. How do you do it faster, better, cheaper? Not speed up and drive localized efficiency or sub-optimization and get worse outcomes. We changed the mindset around the organization. And it's a transformation. It's not overnight, but it's a different way of thinking around systems and the outcomes. So that's happening, and it's aligning the organization overseas to all the functions to deliver what's needed.
Great. I think one of the things you might be able to hone in is what were you doing to enhance customer experience? Because in most cases, customer experience was out the door for a lot of people in this environment. So how did you bring customer experience back in for the worldwide customers you were servicing?
Yes, so the first thing, when it comes to customers, it was at the onset of this was really letting them know that business as usual wasn't going to happen. I mean, it's not something that they wanted to hear, but that line of communication had to be opened. Then, the second piece of it was talking to your customers so that you could prioritize what it is that they needed, when it is that they needed it. And what we did was we focused our attention on those priorities to get the customers, you know, what they needed on time. A newly defined on time, but nevertheless on time. So, you know, to me, what COVID has taught organizations, and I asked some questions to the previous panel about this, is how is it that not only we collaborate with our suppliers, and Tara kind of touched on that, but how do we collaborate with our customers, have an open dialogue, have the connectivity, give them advance notice to when things are going wrong? Because if you kind of think about it, business of the past, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if something went wrong, the customer would never know it. You'd kind of bury it and expedite things and move things quicker and pull inventory from someplace else so the customer wouldn't see it. In today's world, that isn't the case. That supply may not be coming because the port is out in the middle of or the ship's out in the middle of the ocean, or it's stuck at another port because they're not offloading. So, I mean, I had a customer call me this morning and they said, I had a ship coming into Savannah. And when I got the BOL, I found out that it was going to LA Long Beach. You know, and I mean, that really is disruptive to them because now they've got the lead times that are happening in LA Long Beach, and they've got to get it straight off the port, and then they've got to get it moved somehow to the final destination, which was in the Northeast coast. So I think that to answer your question, the customer piece of this and how it is that you manage their expectations during this crisis has been all about communication and being open and letting them know what it is that you can and you cannot do.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think we touched a little bit on automotive earlier, and, you know, the just-in-time. The contracts typically would say, well, if you shut down the line, it's gonna be $1 million, you know, per hour or whatever. Well, we all know just-in-time did go out the window, and we would call it now just-in-time hybrid, right? And that's trying to get it closer back to JIT here. And with that, you know, some of the conversations today, more on, let's say, the consumer side of products being made. And I am targeting this back towards Lou and Tara. What's your thoughts on any sort of bullwhips occurring in this marketplace, and your feelings, whether it's the consumer side or any part of the movement? Are you seeing any of that at this point, or is it still too early to gauge? You know, and I'll give you an example. Sherry Harriman this morning, absolutely, that discussion was coming up. We just don't know is part of the problem, but we know it's probably going to happen.
Hey, Tim, this is Lou. I just wanted to give you a perspective of some of the issues that I'm seeing in the field today. The customers, you know, some of the big boys, they've been inundated very recently with a lot of volume. So instead of, you know, what you're talking about just in time, there's a big discrepancy between what the buyer wants and what the companies receiving facilities are giving appointments for. So, you know, they might need something you know, by Friday for an ad that's breaking this weekend, yet the receiver department is giving us an appointment in December, because that's the first available appointment time they have. So, you know, internally to the customers, you know, function A is not talking to function B. So we're getting pushback because we're picking freight assuming it has to be there by a certain date. And then, you know, the carrier calls us up and says, hey, I don't want that freight for 3 weeks because I got an appointment that's, you know, in December. Now we're running into the issue where I have a bunch of freight on my dock floor and these customers don't want it right away, even though the buyer needs it for sales. So, you know, I don't know how we close that loop. I don't know what we can do to close that loop, but, you know, it's a loop that I'm seeing out there with multiple people right now just because of the influx of volume going into these retailers, you know, their issues are the same as everybody else. They don't have the time to receive everything, nor do they have the space to do it.
Sounds like it's the issue coming. Tara, any insight from your side on this?
Hey, Terry, you're on YouTube. Yep.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but it's definitely coming. You know, it happens. I mean, you know, generally anytime, you know, the supply gets tight or short. So I certainly think it's coming. I think, you know, there are a couple ways that you can mitigate some of it. You're not going to completely eliminate it, I don't think, but one is, you know, have a lot of communication with your customers on what their forecast is and what they think they're going to sell. So you're buying more to that, and getting that data in essence from them. So you're not, you know, really, you know, overbuying and overinflating your inventory levels. So like during COVID, I mean, we talked to the customers a lot more, had a lot more communication with the suppliers as well. So I think kind of balancing that communication. And then the second thing that will help is make sure your inventory is decoupled. So you're very thoughtful about what inventories you want to hold, what inventory levels you want to hold, and where, so you don't get the ripple effect all the way back down the supply chain. You may get it in a portion, but if you got the inventory decoupled, and you're holding it in different parts of your organization, your operation, that will help some of the bullwhip effect as well.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the audience right now?
I'm kind of curious, you talk about you're trying to fix the lead time of the supplier, right? So what was their take? I mean, we've got partnering on our side as well with supplier, but I think different industries have different perspectives. Were they willing? How far did you have to incentivize them to do that?
I don't know if you're hearing the question. I know you're having a little mic thing. So fixing lead time, how did that work? Was there any sort of collaboration that worked on with your suppliers? And how did that happen, or how did you address it?
Is that the her or me?
You,
That's the loaded question, I think, right? But I think this is where the learning comes from play is that I don't need more volume, I need more mix. It's not less business, less volume, it's more volume with more mix to get more flow. So inventory, right, when you think of lean, it's excess inventory is waste, not inventory. Inventory is necessary to maintain flow. So free cash flow, working capital, inventory that's stuck in the system is not moving, is a problem for everybody. So I don't need more of what I don't need. I need more of the right stuff at the right time. So how do I incentivize them on mix? So think of, I view this as safety, quality, delivery, cost in that order of priority. Right? So mix will get more volume, but I don't need all of the same 15. I need 3 of these, 2 of these, 7 of those. So in terms of the supply chain, the lead time, everybody's buffering inventory, or the just-in-time comment. Everybody's trying to deliver more what's needed, but only predicting what's not actually moving, and it's sitting. So lead time is getting longer. When I mentioned that fixed capacity in the supply chain with vessels, containers, and all that inventory is accumulating, the next part I actually need is going to wait at the end of the line for all that to be consumed in front of us. Lead time's actually gotten worse. So I need to incentivize them with more volume, more business, because of that container has a higher mix now of what I need to flow more material, which generates more revenue, more volume for them. So partnering with them differently around more business is a different conversation around, you'll get more business with more mix because that's flowing and it's working capital and cash flow for everybody. They actually generate more revenue, more volume, more business because they become more flexible supplier. I can't expect them to do that. It was working with them to actually become a better customer. And how do I communicate my demand and my schedule, my sequence and my mix and smaller lot sizes to enable them to do that rather than just expect them to deliver what I need. I was the source, we talked about that bullwhip effect. I was the source of that variation, that amplified. They're trying to order raw material well in advance of what I need, hoping it's what I take, and it was never right? So small lot size more frequently throughout that whole supply chain, with tighter feedback loops. Not to say it was perfect answers, but tighter feedback loops to say it's no longer what we need, it's the market's changed, the demand's changed. This is what I need on the next container of this type, and incentivize them to grow more revenue and volume as a result of higher mix. Because that's what took lead time down for the whole system, not just delivery lead time. We think of all the inventory that's in the pipeline there. It was really taking the entire system's lead time down, incentivizing them with greater volume in business or revenue because they became a more flexible supplier, because I was a better customer and how I communicated that. And it's hard. This is fighting uphill battles and pushing the rope sometimes, but that's that thinking. We think of Toyota and lean thinking around that whole supply chain aspect. It's transforming the way people think and just maybe how they're currently measured or rewarded or incentivized in terms of revenue.
With that, what recommendations can you give the group here today of how you can give some insight of maybe what they should be thinking about between now and year end and the first of the year? And I'll let anybody take the question first online. I realize you guys are on the East Coast, and I certainly appreciate it, Lou and Tara.
Yeah, Tim, one of the things I think everybody's gonna have to be very cognizant of is, President Biden came out with the edict that, you're gonna clean up the ports of LA. Today, I saw an announcement come out saying that there is now another emergency surcharge if containers are left at the port for an extended period of time. And, depending upon whether it's rail or a truck, it's a couple of days, but the impact is, to the ocean carriers, which is going to be pushed on to the carriers, which is going to be pushed on to the customers. So they're going to be incentivized to try to get the product off the ports. And it's going to be an influx because, like Tara said, you kind of built up a little bit more inventory because, it used to take, 60 days to get it from China to the East Coast. Now it's 100 days to get it from China to the East Coast. So you built up 40 more days worth of inventory. If they do succeed, I just think technically the bottleneck's going to get thrown further down the line. But if they succeed and able to clear up the bottleneck, every company that planned on increasing inventory 40 days to cover the impact of transit time is going to be inundated with inventory and no place to put it. So, if I had your money, Tim, I'd be buying warehouses all up and down the East and West Coast.
Yeah, but the problem is the price per square foot went through the roof already, so we're a little late, aren't we?
Yeah. But they gotta put it someplace. It can't sit on a container.
Absolutely. Tara, any final comments?
I just think kind of what we've all been talking about. Just be, constant communication with your suppliers and customers, so you're on top of, real-time data as much as you can. Try not to overreact. I know a lot of companies, they have their fiscal year ends, or calendar year ends, obviously, in a couple of months. And they're worried about working capital, inventory levels, et cetera. So don't overreact. Again, make sure you're looking at your data points, communicating, like I said, with customers and suppliers, and don't let your data stay, stagnant. So make sure you're looking at it, a couple times, a month or one time a week, and it kind of depends on your business. But again, just everything that I said before, I think just working collaboratively with your suppliers to make sure that you're getting what you need and when you need it. But I think making sure your eyes on the ball, really. Because it's it could go get worse, or it could get a lot better. I don't think that anybody really knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, Tim, one thing that if you have the flexibility to do this, get with the marketing team, get with the sales team, and sell the product you have.
Right.
won't take the orders for the product you don't have because you don't really know when you're gonna get it. And, that might mean changing ads that have been out there for months and months. As Tara said, work with your customers, work with the suppliers, sell what you got.
And the CEO will love you because you'll recognize that inventory in the quarter.
Right.
Jamie, any final thoughts from you, sir?
Oh, thank you. I think what Tara mentioned and what Louis mentioned is quite on the spot. I think is the big pressure is going to come on cash flow, on how you keep selling and you keep your customer somehow attending their needs with what you got. And then the reality is you have to open a space for building up inventory and forecasting when you are going to have finished products to sell. So I think rationalization of, let's say, per numbers is key. And then having a good visibility of when are you going to be ready for the demand that you are not attending. So that's what I can add.
Great, thank you. With that, I'm gonna let you, Rob, have the final words. And I wanna thank everybody involved, and we'll give out awards here in a second after Rob gives us the final words. Thank you.
So maybe I think from this is, what problem needs solving? Well, we got a lot more data, more visibility to data, we'll probably overreact. What's the learning here in terms of, I'm not talking about COVID and pandemic, I think it's truly around this whole, now we understand a little bit more, but let's step back and what problem needs solving with it, rather than a whole bunch of symptoms, and if all these problems manifest in the supply chain, it's not where they're occurring, it's not where they're created, it's not where they're really occurring in the process. How do we better define what problem needs solving than a lot of, we talk about reaction today and problem solving is really what's the learning to maybe mitigate, I don't say prevent, but maybe mitigate the impact of something like this as it happens. I think that's the learning around how well do we define the problems going forward from this. That's something different, I think, my takeaway.
Thank you. I just want to say one last time, I really appreciate every single person that came in here today. I found this just absolutely earth-shattering, a ton of great information. I am glad to be associated with every one of you. I enjoyed it so much, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. Thank you very much. Thanks for staying up late, Tara and Lou. Go have a wonderful dinner. And you as well, Jamie. Thank you so much. It's a wrap.
Are they overseas?
Lean Digital Transformation Executive of the Year. It could be worse. You could be the guy at the security gate of the year.
Yeah.
I'm saying.